Owl Pod, the official podcast of Temple Athletics. I'm your host, Kevin Copp, and our guest today on our last all-new Friday episode of 2025 is my boss, Vice President and Debbie and Stanley Lefkowitz 65 Director of Athletics, Arthur Johnson. Arthur was named the AD here at Temple on October 6th, 2021, and has led the Owls for the past 4+ years. Prior to his time here at Temple, Arthur was a member of the athletics senior leadership team at the University of Texas, where he had worked since 2011. And before that, he and I were briefly co-workers together at the University of Georgia, where he graduated from in 1992, and I graduated from in 2010. Now, Arthur was gracious enough to sit down with us in the summer to record this interview before the Owlpod even launched. This was a little bit of practice for us, so you're not going to hear any breaking news or discussion of the current Temple season here, but longtime listeners of the Owlpod know that we are much more interested in our guests' stories and the path that led them to where they are today. So I think Arthur's story will be of great interest to anyone that follows Temple Athletics, and we have dug it out of the proverbial garage to give it to you as a little early holiday present. Some insight from our leader, our Vice President, and Debbie and Stanley Lefkowitz, 65 Director of Athletics. Quick housekeeping note before we begin. I mentioned this is our last all-new Friday episode of the year. We will be back next Friday with our Best of 2025 year-end recap, where we're going to listen back to some of the highlights and excerpts from some of our favorite conversations of the year. So be sure to check that out. We'll give you some great bonus listening over the holiday break. But without any further ado, here is Arthur Johnson after this quick word from our Owlpod sponsors.
From Westchester to Doylestown, from Drexel Hill to Lansdale to Philly, we all look out for each other, stepping up to keep our communities going strong. And at Independence Blue Cross, we're here to keep you going strong. We've been deeply rooted in our communities for more than 85 years, and that connection to members has earned us our spot as the #1 health insurer in the region. So while you look out for your neighbors, know IBX is always looking out for you. Learn more at IBX.com.
One of the interesting things, I think, is we've had the chance. I've introduced you at many, many events, so I've gotten to hear, and I think that folks that have come out and seen you at season ticket holder parties or other Temple events have gotten to hear a lot of your vision and, of course, the vision and the values that have informed your tenure here as Debbie and Stanley, 65 Director of Athletics and Vice President at Temple. But I want to take a few steps back, if we can, today, because I think this is an interesting opportunity just to give folks a chance to get to hear your story and what brought you here, because I think it really all dovetails together. So I want to take us all the way back to Thomasville, Georgia, if we can. we can speed along in some intermediate stops, but just tell me. Obviously, like so many of us that get into collegiate athletics as a line of work, you have to have some love for sports as a kid. I think that's something that we all have in common. What was your kind of recollection or interaction just with sports as a kid growing up in South Georgia?
Thomasville, Georgia is an incredible community, a great community that cared about young people. Sports, education were always very important. Had a chance to grow up with some incredibly talented people, watching people compete at the highest level. I think one of the things I get into conversations with people about when they start talking about high school football, 1974, they won the national championship. And a lot of people don't know that. But they went 2 years back-to-back, had great teams. William Andrews was one of the he was the lead person on that team who ended up going to Auburn and then eventually to the Atlanta Falcons, and was one of the best running backs in the NFL prior to getting hurt, just a ACL in the offseason. But then you had guys like Guy McIntyre, who was also like a freshman on that team. But sports at that time really probably helped bring the community together more than ever before, because they integrated the schools, maybe in 70, 71, combined the two schools. Both schools had been successful in athletics, and then all of a sudden they take off and they win, 2 championships back-to-back. And so that kind of started it, and we were around it, got to see it, got to see a lot of great athletes who were successful, but had a lot of successful coaches and mentors and people who were around. So growing up, we played everything. We played everything all season. If it was football season, you play football. You transition to basketball. You go to baseball. In the summer, you end up playing baseball or you're resting, and then that whole cycle started all over again. And then you got to watch Friday nights, town shut down, basketball games, middle school and high school, packed, great crowds, great basketball players as well. So we were around it. We were at the YMCA on a regular basis, again, playing everything. Now, my best friend growing up was a guy named Sean Jones. Sean, probably he was ahead of his time. He was a starting quarterback at Georgia Tech when they shared the national championship with Colorado in 1990. So he goes to Georgia Tech. I go to Georgia. His brother ended up coming to Georgia, so they would play against each other. Big news. Mike was incredible. Their dad was one of our coaches and one of our principals. So he was around coaching the D-line. And then we had this rival across town, Thomas County Central, and they've, a really good program that they turned around. They had this guy who started a quarterback named Charlie Ward. But we would always, we always spent time with each other because Charlie lived in the city. He went to the county school because that's where his dad worked. So we had always known Junior, and I tell people when I think about greatness, we always knew he was different. So when I tell you, just as a person, as an athlete, as a human being, what people got to see what he did at Florida State and then what he did in the NBA, we saw that as 12, 13-year-olds. But we would always play on the same AAU basketball team. So we had a really good backcourt. We had another guy named Tony Hardy who was a really good basketball player. He ended up going to West Georgia. But most teams couldn't get the ball up the court. You had those three. In addition to that group, we had a guy named Eric Curry. So Eric Curry was the number 6 pick by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he was he was in our class. He went to Alabama, where he became an All-American, and Curry and Copeland. So I went from 1990, Georgia Tech winning, 92, Alabama won the national championship when they beat Miami, and then 93, Florida State won their first one with Charlie being the quarterback. And then in between, we had a guy named Charles Bostic, who was a quarterback after Sean in Thomasville. Well, they ended up winning the state championship the year after we left, and we had a whole lot more. We had that group, plus we had some more talented guys, but we lost to Charlie in the state playoffs. He just willed their team to a win. Now, I will remind people he never beat us in basketball. We won 9 in a row. So we, as you can imagine, had very competitive low leagues and middle school and high school. Our middle school basketball team didn't lose a basketball game until the final game. So, but I had my parents were great. Mom and dad were supportive. Dad always worked hard. He worked 2 jobs. Mom always, we had breakfast and dinner, and I got 4 siblings. My sister, who also ended up coming to the University of Georgia, and then I got 3 older brothers who all served in the military. My oldest brother was a master gun. He's sergeant. He served 32 years in the Marine Corps. And then my 2 younger brothers served in the Air Force. So between the 3 of them, they served over 63, 64 years. But, I wouldn't say we were competitive at home. For me, I had a chance to be around my older brother, so I was around older guys and being able to compete and play and also seeing them. He played basketball. and then seeing his classmates and those guys. But it was just a community where everybody played, everybody knew each other. It was really good.
You have three brothers, all older. Is that correct?
No, one older and two younger.
One
brothers.
older, two younger,
Yes.
and all three of those brothers ended up in the military.
Yes.
Now, was there ever a consideration on your part? Did that just, how did it hit all three of them and miss you?
No, my oldest brother went into the Marine Corps. He ended up serving 32 years, became a master gunny. I just wasn't at that time in my life interested. We had other family members who had been in the military, so I understood what that was. But growing up, you were either going to go to school or you're going to go to the military. You were leaving home,
right?
So you didn't get to stay in the nest. You're going to have to leave the nest, one or the other. And I think both of my younger brothers both ended up. My sister ended up coming to Georgia. She's a Terry College grad. She was third. And then my two younger brothers, one went to Valdosta State, the other one went to Savannah State, but then they ended up joining the Air Force. They, and they both served. My youngest brother ended up serving 23 years before he retired, about 3 years ago, I think now. And then, but my second youngest brother, he did 8 years. He just decided, hey, I'm not the career guy. And he and his family, he has three daughters. They live, and his wife, and they have three daughters, and he's got a couple of grandkids. They live in Atlanta. And then my youngest brother's in Atlanta now as well.
Now, you seem to, as we talked a lot about youth sports and high school and just the culture of playing everything and just some of the names that you're playing with and against really jump out. And I'm wondering, does it, on one hand, it's got to be humbling, right? When you think, you can be the big fish in the small pond and then you go see Charlie Ward, you learn real quick. But you also say, in basketball, for instance, you're holding your own against some of these guys. How did it play into just the dreams of maybe, hey, I can go to Georgia and walk on, or maybe I could play basketball at the collegiate level? How did was that ever a dream that you held?
Not really a dream, the college football piece, or, you're thinking college athletics, and that may be a way to it because we did have some success, but not at the level, and now that I understand it, not at that level to be, a high Division I or Division I, period. But it was still, and when they were doing what they were doing, you never really thought about it because we had been together since,
Right. That's what I'm wondering 10. Is could you appreciate being in it as much as you were, how special it actually was? No. Yeah, that's hard.
Not at that time.
Right.
Not at that time. You wouldn't have imagined the kind of success that people in that core group had overall. And then we had some people that I didn't name who were extremely successful in other areas of in careers that they've gone into, and being in the C-suite or high ranking in the military. I got one who's actually here. Evan's dad was a classmate of mine, Evan Williams, who works with you as a student here. So we just had a really good group, and sports was important. But school was also important. So when I was at Georgia, there were probably, over a period of time, probably 12 of us there, from that school, and that where we all knew each other and we were around each other, and different classes that came behind us. So I had a chance to go to Georgia. After looking at a couple other options, and I thought I'd walk on in football, but I started being a manager and I started getting paid and realized it was, what a bad gig.
Again, you kind of see that pragmatic streak, right? You think about going to Georgia as a walk-on, but you realize, hey, there's money to be made as a manager and there's a path for me here. And that kind of starts to wind its way through as you work your way up and up and up. Did you have, I imagine that you didn't start out that kind of pursuit of a 40-year career in college athletics thinking I'm going to be sitting in an athletic director's chair. That couldn't have been the dream first day out of school.
Oh, no, absolutely not. I often tell young people that I visit with that I didn't even know these jobs existed.
Right.
Even when I was at Georgia, I never thought about it as a career until probably in graduate school. But as my undergraduate background is from the Terry College of Business in Risk Management and Insurance. And the RMI program at Georgia has been one of the top 2 RMI programs in the country for the last 40 years, 40 plus years. So it has tremendous history, tremendous success with placing students. So I was planning on going to work in that space before I decided to go to graduate school and then started working in this business. But and I still have a passion for risk management. So it forms the way that I think. It forms the way that I look at things. I still follow things. So it's still a part of me. I'm just not working directly in that field every day. But I went to Georgia. It was a place that I'd always admired. I had been to camp up there, had spent time there, and I loved it. I had an incredible experience. Had a chance to join my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi, and spend time, meeting and working with people and developing relationships. I got a degree in risk management and insurance from the Terry College of Business. Never thought I'd be in this business, not getting that degree. So, but after I graduated, I had a chance to be a graduate assistant and get a master's. So I stayed and started working in football full time, and then moved over to event management with Coach Lewis Gainey. Coach Lewis Gainey had been the former track coach at Georgia, moved into facilities and event management. And then he grew up 13 miles from my hometown. So we had all of these connections, and I had a chance to go and work with him. And that was probably the biggest eye-opening thing that I learned in this business. Before that, I was really only aware of what happened between the hedges and what happens with teams and that. But you go to those meetings and you realize that you were preparing to host at that time it was 82,500 people. And the number of people who were involved in helping us run those events it was incredible. I mean, you're talking about when you're hosting that kind of event, you got ticket takers, you got ushers, you got custodians, you got technical people who are HVAC systems and carpenters, and the elevators. You got to make sure they're working. Then you got to make sure it's cleaned up afterwards. You got traffic control. So it's a incredible mix of people and a diverse group of people who come together to make this happen. Because you could have someone, I tell people, you could be dealing with the governor's office in 1 minute, and the next minute you're dealing with someone that will probably never meet a governor. But you need all of them to make this happen. So that was, kind of my entree into it. And then we got the Olympic Games. So in 92, I think we were in McWhorter Hall. Coach Dooley had gone over to France gone over to Greece. It was in Greece. He and Billy Payne, who was a former player at Georgia, played for Coach Dooley in the late 60s, early 70s, had quit his job and decided, I'm going to bring the Olympic Games to Atlanta. So that's the story of how the Atlanta won the Olympic Games in 96. So when you get an Olympics, it's really not just that city. It's an entire region or an area. Obviously, he was good to his school. So they hosted soccer. We had women's soccer, women's volleyball, and rhythmic gymnastics on campus in Athens. They took the famed hedges out. They went and planted hedges in 2 other areas to make sure they could bring them back in. And what was unique about it, they allowed all of us to work for ACOG and the state at the same time. because that would have been our normal vacation time, but you were going to transition into football. So you weren't going to get a break. So the compromise was, we'll let you do both, but you're not going to get a break for a while. So, but I left prior to the Olympics starting, and I took the job at Arizona State, opportunity that came up, and I moved to the desert. I knew two other people out there. That was just God's grace that I got the opportunity to go to the desert, and that was another huge change in my life, because I had never lived outside of the South. Didn't know people out there. It's a different culture. It's a different terrain, different weather, but I loved it.
You were at Arizona State, and kind of that foray into full-time, you're getting involved more and more in the operations side of things, and then you have then Texas, which really, I think, opens up, the aperture for you in terms of everything that you manage. I know there's another stint back at Georgia as well in a larger capacity. So, just tell us kind of what that path was like as you're starting to move up and up and up, and you're taking on really some of the biggest projects at that time in all. I mean, Georgia and Texas, still two blue chip brands now. Kind of what you were taking on then.
Yeah, the Arizona State, the Arizona State experience was incredible. I mean, it was one where I had an opportunity to go out, and the late coach Bruce Snyder, who is still one of the best coaches I've ever been around, an incredible person as well. He and his family gave me an opportunity, and I was there. I had gotten a call about going to North Carolina. Greg Davis was there at the time with Coach Brown, and then there were a couple other people on the staff that I knew, and they called, and the timing just wasn't right because we were going into preseason practice. So I said no. At that time, Arizona State went to Camp Tontozona. So you packed up like NFL teams used to do when you go this place, and I was like, I can't do that. I don't even want to talk about it. And then fast forward a couple of years later, Matt goes to Texas, North Carolina, has an opportunity. My girlfriend, then fiance, and now wife was in Atlanta. Carolina was coming off some great seasons, so I had a chance to go work with Carl Torbush and that staff. And then the person that I was reporting to ended up getting sick. So all of a sudden, I'm thrown into the fire, and I'll throw up it'll sound like I'm name dropping, but the reality is, here I am thrown into that mix, and guess who we have on the team? Julius Peppers.
That's right.
You
seem to be
redshirt freshman.
Wherever you go, you seem to be bumping into All-Americans and Pro Football Hall of Famers.
So it was so to see him as a redshirt freshman, and Ronald Curry, who had been a high school All-American and who was a great basketball and football player in Virginia, and you got a chance to go. He was our quarterback. And but I only stayed there the one season because an opportunity came up to go to Texas. This time when Greg called, I listened.
This was the right time,
and the timing was much better. So I ended up in Austin from 1999 through 2005, and we had an incredible run where we didn't lose a home game. Got to meet a lot of incredible people. We recruited at a high level. We were graduating kids. We were having success. And then an opportunity came up for me to go back to Georgia because Damon Evans, who is now the athletics director at SMU, became the first black AD in the SEC when he succeeded Coach Dooley. So Georgia's home. So I had a chance to go back to Athens, and at that time I transitioned more into administration.
I was going to say, was that the transition from now kind of being embedded in the football program to now the kind of the departmental, the administrative side of athletics?
Yeah,
which has some pros and cons.
Yeah, and it was back to that because when I first started, I was in event operations and event management and facility, so you worked with everybody then. Now I just went back into it and had oversight of that area. We also, the way Georgia is set up as athletic association is a separate 501(c), and so you had to insure all of the risks. So that's when the risk management came back into play. So I had to oversaw all of that. I had a chance to go back and work with my professors, a couple of them that were still there. We put together a comprehensive risk management program with insuring everything that you can imagine that you would run into because you didn't have the sovereign immunity from the state. So I had a chance to delve into that. I got into construction. I got into working with the basketball program, spending time around the golf teams and spending time around other student athletes. And I thought that was important for me because I always understood it. I always understood the football part. So that gave me exposure to other areas, other sports. And you know, we had some success. We ended up going to the Sugar Bowl. Unfortunately, we had a tough ending against West Virginia men's basketball. While we struggled overall, we ended up winning the SEC tournament championship the night that the weekend that a tornado
yes.
hit the Georgia Dome. So it was, and then I was involved in construction. So the first major project that I did, I think when you were there, it's the training facility for gymnastics and basketball at the Olympic Sports Weight Room. That was a $30 million project that I was involved with from the time that I got there, and they were still in design development, and then through ribbon cutting and being in all of those meetings and being involved in that. And then we did a couple other projects for football. But I just got exposure to all of the other things, being friends with Damon. I had an opportunity being in the room as we worked on multimedia rights. At that time, we had one of the highest multimedia rights deals in the country. For our size with ISP and working with that group. We also were, selling out the stadium. The ticket priority system was going really well. We had some teams that won national championships. As you know, gymnastics and Coach Suzanne Yakelin, so you're around that greatness, or Jack Barley winning in swimming, Manny Diaz winning in men's tennis, Jeff winning in women's tennis. So McGon, she's winning in equestrian.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a unique experience because I had a chance to travel around the country to look at equestrian facilities because I actually went out and led the initiative to buy the current barn that they have and those acres.
You're a long way from football at that point.
So you were we're traveling around the country
Sure.
looking at these places, and we found an incredible site about 13 miles from campus. It's out on Ashtondale Road. I understand that they've done a whole lot more with it now, but it had everything that they needed. But I also got an appreciation for equestrian student athletes, the work that they had to put in. You're taking care of the horse. There isn't a trainer.
Right.
I'm taking care of the horse. There is no one cleaning up after the horse decides they want to use the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
You got to groom the horse. You got to feed the horse. You got to do that. And so we had some great experiences there. It was really good. Coach Dooley was still around. Coach Goff was around, who were two of my mentors, and Coach Lewis Gainey, who was my first boss. So I got to see them. Family was close. I knew the place. Brian Gant, who is still there, was a dear friend. And the one thing about being at home is now you have all of these reunions
Mm-hmm.
on a regular basis, whether they're coming back for basketball, football, homecoming, or just showing up, in the building. So that was a pretty cool experience with Mark Richt was our head coach. He had a lot of success. And then an opportunity came up for me to go back to Austin. And, my wife and I had spent time there. We loved Austin. It was that great experience. They had some transition in their staff. So I got a chance to go back. And then DeLoss Dodds, the AD there, and Mac started out trying to help them find someone. then all of a sudden they were like, well, we want you to come back. So I tell people it's 20 years or 20 days. If you like a place, you can be there 20 years. But if something happens and you make a bad mistake, you could be gone in 20 days. Or if a great opportunity comes up, you could be gone in 20 days. So I would say that, and people thought it was tongue-in-cheek, but that's just the reality of the business that we're in. It's high risk, high reward if you have the wrong kind of incident happen. So I had a chance to go back, or Talitha and I had a chance to go back to Austin, and at that time, DeLoss and Mac agreed that I could work in both places. Now I got two loves, so it's perfect. I can participate in main administration, be around him, be mentored by him. He agreed to help me go do the things that I wanted to do, and then I was back involved with football. And when I went back, I never imagined that period that we would, not have success. You imagine the first 6 years that you're there, you never lose a home game.
Right. You think Texas football is going to be good forever. Yeah.
Just so, and then even basketball and baseball. So all of a sudden, within 3.5 years, Coach Brown is gone, Coach Augie Garrido is gone, and Rick Barnes are gone, and those are three giants in their sports in this industry, and they had a lot of success. Rick Barnes went to, I think in his 15 years there, or 16 years, he went to 15 NCAA tournaments.
Shows you how high the standard is.
Had Kevin Durant, and he had a list of first rounders. TJ Ford took us to the Final Four. So Rick was, doing great, and then Augie Garrido had won a national championship or 2 national championships in baseball, and baseball's going well and good, but at a point. And then DeLoss, who had been there 30-plus years, you never imagined him not being there. All of a sudden, you have that transition, and that they're all gone. When you're in football ops, the good thing about it is you work with everybody. So you're dealing with the ticket office, you're dealing with marketing, promotions, compliance, the business office, your construction people, student affairs, financial aid, housing. Unfortunately, at times, legal people. Dealing with parents, you're dealing with high school coaches, and if you're running camps, so you are. So I ran camps there all of that time. So I had high school coaches that I knew throughout the state and even into some other states. Some are still really good, dear friends that'll reach out and check on me or talk to me, or they send me recommendations on guys. I always pass it along. I tell them I don't recruit. I don't look at
I'm
that.
out of that. I'm out of that business now.
But I'll pass it along, and I trust you. But I had great experience, and then I went there, and we went through a lot of change. So when people ask me about change. That's where, we had Steve was there for about 20 months, and then Mike Perrin came in, and Mike was great. I had known Mike before. We got all of these changes, and we go and hire Shaka Smart. That was probably it was I didn't probably. I broke a lot of laws in Virginia when we were recruiting him. In terms of driving. So it's the only time. So let me clarify that.
The statute of limitations is expired on all of this. Yeah.
A lot of, because we get on the plane to go across the country to get him. So a funny story. So we would use this plane, an incredible donor who's a dear friend. In fact, we played phone tag yesterday. We used his plane. But his plane always took the baseball coach to wherever the baseball team was playing. So the plane had to go there first. So they had a series in Stillwater. So now all these people are tracking the plane. And the plane's going to Stillwater. So they think we're going to talk to the coach at Oklahoma State.
Yep.
When we were not. We took him off, flew to Richmond. And when we landed in Richmond, news media was there. I call it paparazzi. They're there. They're capturing information. The car comes out. And then the car starts following us. So then I had to drive through the streets of Richmond and through some neighborhoods. So Steve would tell that story to people and finally lost them.
You lost your tail.
Yeah, I lost the tail, and obviously the rest was history. We were able to go through that process. And Shaka trusted us and ended up coming to Texas. He and his family. He's another incredible human being. And then we hired Chris Del Conte, and Chris was also great to me and my family. So I had an opportunity with that, and then Chris came in, and Chris, if anybody that follows Texas now, he believes in construction. There's always a shovel in the ground.
Yeah.
So we started working on a lot of stuff. I mean, it was we were being pushed. We had started one project in the south end zone around football, and we had some plans. So I already knew about some of the plans because we had some plans from 2012. So we knew what was possible and what could happen. And then we were looking at another project. And then he came on board, and then he just took it to a whole new level. I mean, when I left, we were just finishing up almost $750 million in construction. It included the football stadium. We had to work through COVID on these projects that included the Moody Center. That was an incredible experience, but going back to my time at Georgia, it was not the first time I was dealing with construction, so I'm in meetings on a regular basis. Also, unfortunately, had to work through, or we were involved in the Varsity Blues case. So you got that exposure to what that kind of situation could look like, and we worked to get back on the right track. We needed to win, and football there drives a lot of stuff. I mean, I tell people, Chris will have $45 million in the bank before he sells a ticket.
Yeah.
So it's but I tell people the pressure is the same there, and you're working just as hard because you base your budgets on it being full. So when you're not full, it causes stress. So, and I think Chris realized, let me make this an incredible experience so that it's not based on what happens on the field. Now, he knows that what happens on the field is damn important. However, he knew that creating an incredible game experience, those pieces were very important so that people would come and they wouldn't necessarily, they might not be happy if you don't win, or no, they won't be happy if you don't win. However, that's not the only thing they're thinking about. So he created the Bevo Boulevard. So we had to pull all of that off. The Longhorn City Limits, where he brings in a band and there's a free concert prior to every game. Then he went to the Texas-Oklahoma game, and it's in the middle of the fair grounds in Dallas. So then he decides we need a Ferris wheel. We needed the Midway. So he created a Midway in a part of the stadium, and I'm sure it's grown and he's done more since that time. But it's an incredible activation, and it was also an understanding of the fan experience and what that means when you're hosting an event and going through that piece. So, and then, this opportunity came up for me. It was, I had a great situation in Austin. Like Chris told me, I didn't have to leave, but I wanted to be an athletics director. But I also wanted to be in a major city. At this point, Talitha and I had our son, Aaron.
Well, that's got to make the transition. It's got to make you think about it differently, right?
Yeah.
I know you talk about going from Georgia to Texas. You've got to have that conversation with your wife. It's a different story now when there's a child in the picture, for sure.
Child, and fortunately, he was, but let me be really clear. He wasn't going to have a vote at 6 or 7 years old.
Sure.
So he wasn't. But I guess he was about 8. So he wasn't going to have a vote, which he didn't. But you have to take those things into consideration about where you're going.
Right.
And I'll say, when I had a chance to research Temple, and I knew about Temple, as I've been quoted before, about, because of basketball and John Chaney and the success that Temple had. But I also knew a little bit about the football part, because I think they played Georgia when I was growing up, so I had seen that. Knew about Paul Palmer's run and Heisman finish. If you're following sports, you would know that part. I didn't know Bruce Arians, so I didn't understand that. Obviously, I understand who he is now, and but I think one of the things when I researched it, I was surprised by the number of students. I had a chance to obviously see the success in 15 and 16. Ironically, in 15 and 16, one of the people that was on the staff was Phil Snow. So Phil was a defensive coordinator. Phil was our defensive coordinator when I talked about Arizona State years ago. So you follow each other and you follow what's going on. So I had a chance to so I followed Temple, closer. So I understood that you could have success there. I knew about the historical success in basketball with under Coach Cheney. And but when I saw the commitment from the administration, that was really important. So I had a chance to meet with the committee that included a couple of trustees, a couple of coaches, and then the former president, Jason Wingard, gave me this opportunity. I couldn't say no. It was also, I wanted to be in a city. So if you kind of follow my background, I really haven't been in a small town. I tell people Athens is probably the worst place that I lived in. I love Athens.
I was going to say, that's, you're doing pretty well.
I did pretty well, but it's a college town.
Right. Not a city.
It's not a city. It's a great college town. And when you're in a college town as an administrator, you don't get away. Right. You don't get a break from it. And you have to always be on. And now it's a great town. It's great to be there. It's great to know a lot of people. But I spent 14 years there, and I got still got a lot of great friends and relationships there. And I know my way around. So you move to a place and you know your way around. But when I researched Temple, and I had a chance to walk on campus. And when I say walk on campus, not in Lear Coors and not in McGonigal, when you actually go east of Broad Street, a block, and you get into the middle of campus, you're just like, wow, this is different from